Okay, I think I'm live now. This is my first time doing this. I'm going to do a little talk on anemia. I'm going to discuss the signs and symptoms of anemia. And then if anybody is viewing, I'll open it up to some questions. You can ask me anything about anemia. If you want to ask me particularly about what we talked about today with the signs and symptoms, that's great, but anything else is welcome as well. And I'm just hoping to make this kind of an open space for people who have a lot of questions about their condition, or perhaps if they're asking for somebody else, then you can ask me. I'm very knowledgeable about this subject and I can help you out with it. I have written a book about this. I have, I would say, a better understanding of why exactly anemia is so troublesome. And well, we'll get into the difference of my understanding and conceptualization in a bit. But to start, let's just name many of the symptoms of anemia. And there are many. I want you to think about how widespread these are across all of your body systems, right? So, you know, many, like if you have liver problems, it affects your liver, right? Well, might be a bad example because that can affect other things, but you'll see with anemia, you have all sorts of issues that don't seem related, but I'll explain why they're related in a second. So here is just a broad list: pallor, which is paleness; fatigue; weakness; lightheadedness; cognitive issues; irritability; poor sleep; depression; anxiety; increased susceptibility to infections; delayed healing; nausea; poor digestion; poor appetite; weak hair; bruising; increased risk of bone fractures; cold extremities; headaches; migraines; edema, which is swelling, and more. So if you're listening to that, you should be wondering, like, why in the world would it cause weak hair and cold extremities and anxiety? Like, what do those things have to do with each other? And fundamentally, what you need to understand about anemia is stop thinking about it as just a low concentration of red blood cells, but think of it as a lack of total blood. So it can be that you have a low concentration, but the concentration uh, does not matter. It's not the ultimate thing that matters. And what I mean by that is if I have a perfectly normal concentration of red blood cells in my blood, but I only have 3 liters of blood when I should have 5 liters of blood, it doesn't matter what my concentration is. Now, does it, right? I'm going to have 60% of the red blood cells that I should have, 60% of the oxygen delivering capability that I should have. And fundamentally, what anemia is it's a lack of blood that leads to a lack of oxygen delivery to all of your tissues. Why these symptoms are so broad is because all of your tissues need blood and oxygen. If you have anemia, you're not getting enough blood and oxygen, so all of your tissues suffer, especially the brain, because it is so hungry for oxygen. Okay, so let's go over these symptoms one by one now. Pallor, which is paleness. So this is good because it's something visible. You can see it, right? You can check yourself, right? Does my face appear pale? Do my nail beds appear pale, or do they have like a nice bright pink color to them, right? You can look at your lips or the blood vessels underneath your eyelids and stuff. If you have darker skin, it might be objectively a little bit harder to see, but you can still see it. One thing to keep in mind is if you are colorblind, if you're a man and you're one of the 10% of men who are colorblind, you won't be able to see it, at least not as well. It might depend on what type of colorblindness you have, but you probably won't be able to see it. And basically, what pallor is showing is that you don't have enough blood, and your body is going to preferentially keep the blood in the core where it is most needed. And so around the periphery, around the skin, the nail beds, you know, around the periphery of your body, you're going to have less blood there. So the blood that normally gives your skin a nice rosy red color is missing. And so you appear more pale, a bit more white, a bit more yellow, sometimes gray or even green, but typically just like paler, right? The second one we talked about was fatigue. So this one is kind of obvious when you understand that it's just a lack of oxygen delivery. You need oxygen to create energy. If you're not getting enough blood and oxygen, you're going to be fatigued, right? Uh, your whole body will. Your muscles are highly aerobic, and if they're not getting enough oxygen, then they're going to tire very easily, and you're going to be fatigued. Weakness, same thing there. The muscles, they need a ton of oxygen, and they'll be very weak if they're not getting enough blood and oxygen. Lightheadedness, this is from a lack of oxygen in the brain, right? Also from a lack of just blood volume. If you are sitting down and when you stand up too quickly, you get lightheaded. That is because you need a tremendous amount of blood volume and blood pressure to keep the blood going up to the brain because it's elevated, it's above your heart, it's hard to get enough blood up there. So if your blood volume is low, this is why it's good to think about blood volume, not just concentration. If your blood volume is low, then as you stand up, or if you go from lying down to standing up, you might experience a time where you feel lightheaded all of a sudden because you don't have enough blood volume and your body's not adjusting quickly enough. Cognitive issues, again, the brain needs a tremendous amount of oxygen. If you don't get enough oxygen to your brain, it's not going to function properly, right? And because of that, you're going to have cognitive issues. Our cognition, like what we think of when we think of like intellect, we think of reasoning, we think of memory, language abilities, math, right? These things are very peripheral. They're on the newest like layer of our brain, the neocortex. And as amazing as they are not as vital as the more inner, deeper brain regions that control your ventilation, your heart rate, your body temperature, your hunger, right? Those things are more vital. So actually your cognition is more sensitive to a lack of oxygen than other brain processes because they're just less vital for survival. So pay attention to how sharp you feel mentally, right? And if your cognition is suffering, if your memory is suffering, that could be a sign of anemia or other metabolic disturbances. Irritability, basically, if you don't have enough energy, your body's not going to want to be in a good mood, ready to do things, right? Your mood is like it's like it's an adaptive thing to have a good mood when you have lots of energy to spend. But when you don't have the energy to spend, your body down regulates its mood so that you're less likely to go waste all of that energy that you don't have, right? If I don't have a lot of energy, it would be maladaptive if I was in a positive mood because I would be running around all the time. I'd be laughing and singing and dancing and wasting all of this energy that I don't have. I barely have enough energy to survive. I need to conserve that energy. So I become irritable. My mood becomes low. Poor sleep. This one is very common with people with anemia. And basically, what is happening is you're constantly getting suffocation alarms at night. So if you sometimes people wake up because they're having sleep apnea, they stop breathing, and so they get this suffocation alarm. And you can kind of play around with this by just holding your breath. And if you pay attention, you'll see that your brain starts to panic. Your mind starts to get very panicky and fearful. If you are constantly not getting enough oxygen while you sleep, your body won't be able to relax properly, and your brain will keep kind of waking up even if you don't remember waking up. Your mind is not going to get proper sleep because it doesn't feel relaxed, it doesn't feel physiologically supported enough to relax and go into sleep. And sometimes people with anemia, they might try and sleep. They might be exhausted all day long and feel like they need to sleep, but then when they go down to sleep at night, they can't fall asleep, right? Or they might sometimes feel like they slept for a really long time. They might sleep for like 10 hours, but they don't wake up well rested because you need oxygen for your mind to kind of rejuvenate itself. Depression. I already kind of talked about that with the irritability and the low mood, right? It is adaptive to be depressed when you lack energy, right? When you lack energy, it is good to be depressed because it just helps you conserve that energy. Okay. We think of these mental illnesses as these horrible maladaptive things that if we could just get rid of like the symptoms, then it would be all good. But actually, our body is doing our body is doing its best to survive, and it needs to be depressed so it can conserve energy. Anxiety, this one is easy to understand. Again, if you hold your breath, right, you'll start to feel very anxious. If you are anemic, you're not getting enough oxygen, you're constantly feeling like you're suffocating. Also, your tissues, they produce more acidity because you're using more anaerobic metabolism. And so the acidity of your blood is unregulated and the acidity gets worse. And so your suffocation alarm system in your brainstem is going to go off more. And you're going to feel like something's wrong, something's wrong, something's wrong. Just like you feel like something's wrong when you hold your breath, right? It's the same thing. Or if you do a really long sprint, right? Eventually you kind of get like scared and anxious and like, I got to stop. Like you can probably keep going, but like your mind tells you you have to stop. Or like if you dove deep underwater at a certain point, you're going to get anxious and want to return back to the surface, right? And again, this is adaptive. It is adaptive to be anxious when you are weak and vulnerable. It is adaptive to be anxious when you're suffocating. Increased susceptibility to infections. Basically, you're not getting enough oxygen, right? So your immune cells, they are highly metabolically active cells. When they are active, they need a lot of energy to function properly. And if you don't have enough energy, you don't have enough oxygen, they can't function properly. So you're more susceptible to infections of all sorts. Delayed healing, pretty much the same thing, right? Also with delayed healing, like if you get a cut, right, you have less blood to go to that cut and to heal it and to nourish it as it's healing, right? Or if you like sprain your ankle or something, you just have less blood perfusing that tissue, and so it can't heal as well, right? When you get an injury, it tends to swell up with blood. Why? So that it can get more nourishment, right? If you don't have enough blood, it's not going to get as much nourishment. Nausea and poor digestion and poor appetite. I'll tackle all these at once. When people go up to high altitude, if they climb a mountain, one of the first signs of altitude sickness, or maybe you go on a weekend trip to Colorado and you're not used to the altitude, one of the first signs of altitude sickness is that you feel nauseous, your appetite is weak, and you don't really feel like eating. This is because, like I said, your peripheral tissues are less vital. Digestion, as important as it is less vital to survival, right? There are a lot more things that are more vital to survival than digestion. So when you don't have enough blood and oxygen, your body preferentially conserves the blood and oxygen for other organs and tissues and metabolic processes. And so basically it just sacrifices digestion for the sake of everything else. And you can think of it this way too, like when you have a big meal and all that blood rushes to your digestive tract to help digest the food, which is good, sometimes you get a little tired, right? Because that blood is not elsewhere. It's not in your muscles, it's not in your brain. And so you kind of feel lethargic because all your blood is in your gut digesting food. If you ate a big meal and then did some high intensity exercise, well, guess what? Your stomach is going to hurt after because you have all of that undigested food in your stomach. And by exercising so intensely, you just forced all the blood to go to your muscles. And now you have a bunch of undigested food that wasn't getting enough blood to the digestive tract in order to digest the food properly, right? A few more. Weak hair, so all sorts of kind of hair problems with anemia, and that is that like the blood vessels in your scalp, they're very, very small, and so you need a lot of blood volume to kind of increase the blood pressure enough to perfuse those small little blood vessels. It's not that your hair needs iron per se. It's that iron deficiency causes like this weak hair and bad hair because it like you need a lot of oxygen and blood to get to your scalp so that your hair can grow, right? And if it's not getting there, your hair's not going to grow very well, right? It's kind of simple when you understand it this way. Bruising. Bruising happens when your blood vessels are easily damaged because the collagen matrix is weak. And so your blood vessels, they get damaged, they kind of break, and then blood spills out of the blood vessel into the surrounding tissue, like upon hard impact, such as like, if you get hit with like a soccer ball or something, or you bump into a table. Now, bruising is something that is like far too common, and yet, like everybody just acts like it's a normal thing. They're just like, I'll see people with a bruise and be like, "How'd you get that bruise?" And they'll be like, "Oh, I don't even know. I think I bumped into a table or something." And like they'll laugh about it, and like it's like, no, like you should not be bruising. Like if your body is bruising, that is a sign that something is wrong. Something is very wrong. Your body should not be bruising like that. I used to bruise quite easily. When I fixed my anemia, I haven't seen a single bruise on my body in like 8 years. And I play lots of sports. I get hit very hard all the time. I never ever bruise. It's not something that should be happening. If you're bruising, something is wrong. If you look up what causes bruising, it's stupid. They will tell you it's vitamin K deficiency or vitamin C deficiency. And this is just, it's silly on the face of it because we all know that women bruise far more than men do. And yeah, sure, vitamin K and C deficiencies could cause bruising, but pretty much nobody has a vitamin K or C deficiency. And it's not that women just don't eat enough fruits and vegetables, right? There's no evidence to support that at all. And it's not like men are just way better at eating their fruits and vegetables. The difference is that women are a lot more susceptible to anemia. They're much more likely to be anemic, right? And when you're anemic and iron deficient, you're not getting enough oxygen and you don't have enough oxygen to support collagen production. And so your collagen becomes weak and easily damaged. And the collagen in your blood vessels is weak, easily damaged. Your blood vessels rupture more easily, spilling blood into the surrounding tissue. And that's what causes bruising. Increased risk of bone fractures. This one could be twofold, or it could be one or the other, and I'm not sure exactly what it could be. Your blood becomes more acidic when you are not getting enough oxygen. And when your blood is more acidic, it pulls more calcium out of the bones to kind of help balance out the pH, right? And so you need more alkaline blood to support bone growth. And if it's constantly acidic, you're going to have osteoporosis. You're going to have a lot of mineral taken away from your bones, right? The second thing is, like I talked about with the blood vessels, collagen formation. People don't think about this with when it comes to bones, but bones are not just calcium and phosphorus. They are, much of their strength comes from collagen. Collagen gives the bones their flexibility to bend under certain forces, right? Calcium and phosphorus makes the bones very hard, right? In like a surface way, but structurally, the collagen is what gives the bone its overall strength. And so, for the same reason, if you're not getting enough oxygen to support collagen formation, then your bones aren't going to be as strong. And I noticed this with myself when I was anemic. I broke bones quite easily, and I noticed this all of the time. If you pay attention to people, the majority of people who have broken bones, they have a pallor to their skin. They have a paleness to their skin. And also, people break bones when they get older. When you get older, you get worse and worse at producing blood. Old people, the elderly, they're very susceptible to anemia. Cold extremities. This one is simple. You just don't have enough blood in your extremities to heat yourself up. Your blood is what gives you warmth. The plasma in your blood, which is like the salty electrolyte water, that is very good at transferring heat. Water is very good at transferring heat, right? And so, if you don't have enough plasma volume, this is why it's good to think of anemia not just as a low concentration of hemoglobin, but also just low blood volume, right? If you don't have enough blood volume, you can't perfuse all your tissues. And so your hands and your feet will feel cold, right? And this is a very common problem. It's much more common in women than it is in men. And like this is obviously why. It's because women are more vulnerable to anemia. They don't have enough blood, and so they feel cold all the time. Headaches, migraines, edema. These are the last three, and I'll tackle them together. When people go up the mountains, one of the other first signs of altitude sickness, along with nausea, is edema and swelling. And what happens is the blood vessels will kind of open up and become more leaky so that they can spill out your plasma into the surrounding tissue, which is like the water of the blood, and it spills out into the surrounding tissue and it makes you swell up with edema, it causes swelling, right? And your body is doing this to increase the concentration of the blood so that it can keep the blood to the core and kind of sacrifice the periphery. But when it's doing this, the edema, all of the fluid that builds up around your periphery, especially the hands, the feet, and the face and the head, the swelling in your neck and in your head can cause migraines and edema. And I don't know, I don't think that's the only cause of headaches. I don't think every single headache is caused by that, but I think a lot of them are and can be. And people with anemia and iron deficiency have very high rates of headache and migraine. It's a very common symptom for people with anemia and iron deficiency. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the chat and I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, I'll go on about risk factors for anemia. And there are a few different categories. So I'll say the categories first. It could be caused by blood loss. It could be caused by greater demands, right? If you just you have very high demands for iron and they're not being met. If you have inflammatory conditions, if you have genetic conditions, or if you're just malnourished, or if you have malabsorption issues, you're not absorbing it enough. Now, what does this all mean? So blood loss could be caused by wounds, lacerations, internal bleeding, ulcers, hematomas. Menstruation is the common big one, right? Delivery of a child, there can be a lot of blood loss when you are delivering a child. Surgeries and blood donations. Those are kind of the common causes of blood loss, right? Greater demands. So if you are rapidly growing, and this includes any human who is in fetal stages to puberty and adolescence, at all points there, you're rapidly growing and your cells are dividing at a high rate. So your nutritional demands are very high. And it can be tough to get enough iron. And this is why children of both sexes, male and female, are more likely to be anemic and iron deficient. It's very, very common. And then around puberty, it becomes far more common in women than in men. And we'll talk about all of the reasons for that at another time, but you'll see many of the reasons in this list of risk factors. So other greater demands would be if you lived at high altitude, you'd have a greater demand for blood. You need to produce more blood to deliver enough oxygen. Or if you are exercising excessively and sweating excessively, right? That can increase your demands for all sorts of nutrients, but especially iron and producing enough blood. Inflammatory conditions. And what these inflammatory conditions do is they either decrease erythropoiesis, which is red blood cell production. They either decrease red blood cell production or they increase hemolysis, which is red cell destruction. So they might decrease production or increase destruction. Either way, it results in having less red blood cells. So this could be obesity, cancer, chronic illness, systemic inflammation, autoimmune disorders, thyroid disorders, kidney disease, liver disease, alcohol use, parasitic infections. It's another big one, especially in like developing worlds with less sanitation. Exposure to toxins, certain medications, low testosterone, excessive running. And the excessive running one, the last one, is kind of an interesting one. Apparently, it's caused because your feet are constantly hitting the ground very hard, and your red blood cells, they're squishy and they're very small, but they're kind of they're not very strong. They can be easily damaged, and so if you're constantly hitting your feet very hard on the ground, and if your collagen is weak, then your red blood cells kind of get destroyed more. So people who run a lot, as opposed to other high endurance sports, they might be more vulnerable to anemia than others. Uh, there are genetic conditions, and the two main ones are sickle cell anemia or thalassemia. And basically, what's going on here is that your genes that control for how hemoglobin is made are faulty, and basically, it causes misshaped hemoglobin, and then it can also cause misshaped red blood cells. With the sickle cell, it causes like clumping of your hemoglobin in the red blood cells, and then instead of being like a nice round shape, the red blood cell kind of like all of the hemoglobin goes to like one side, and it kind of becomes like sickle shaped, and then because of that, the red blood cells, they can't just travel through the blood as well. So if you have that, it really increases your chances of struggling with anemia and all of the problems that come with it. And last category, malnourishment and or malabsorption. So if you just aren't getting enough iron in your diet, if you are eating a lot of iron antagonists, such as tannins, phytate, or phytic acid, soy protein, or oxalates, right? They're going to inhibit the absorption of iron. And pretty much all of those iron antagonists are in plant foods. They're in the foods that like you think they're very nutritious, but they come with a lot of defense chemicals because the plants don't want to be eaten. And so those molecules can inhibit your body's ability to absorb certain minerals, such as iron. Crohn's disease, celiac disease, gastric bypass surgery, general poor digestion, and old age are other problems that can lead to malnourishment and malabsorption. And it's obviously like you got to get your iron from somewhere. And if you're like, you need to have a good base of that. You need to have nutrition needs to be your base for that, right? You can supplement, and you could even consider getting iron transfusions, but nutrition needs to be your base for that. And we're getting close to half an hour here, and so there's a couple people in here. If you have any questions, please ask them. You can just type them in the chat, I believe, or even just say hi, just so I know that it's working properly. This is my first time doing one of these live streams. I plan on doing them once a week to talk about anemia, and so that people can better understand their health and what they're going through. And I come at it from a different perspective. I come at it from the perspective of it's a lack of blood, just a lack of blood, a lack of oxygen. And this is why so many of the signs and symptoms are so different, right? It's why you have weak hair. You also get anxiety, cold extremities, all sorts of problems. And so, yeah, I'll be, kind of coming on here once a week. I'll try to do it at the same time. I'm thinking 3:30 on Wednesdays. And you can sign up. You can click the notifications so that you don't miss it if you have any questions that you want to ask. And then, yeah, you can subscribe to my channel so you don't miss other content. I also talk about objectivism, the philosophy, and philosophy in general. and I do some book reviews. But my main passion is on anemia and how that affects and causes mental illness. I wrote a book called Beyond the Pale, and that's what I was kind of reading from. I was reading from one of the sections that was discussing the symptoms and the risk factors. It's called Beyond the Pale: Anemia, the visible yet unseen cause of mental illness and gender dysphoria. And that is because I first saw this pattern in myself. I was anemic. I had anxiety. I was plant-based. I was, terribly anxious. I had a bit of gender dysphoria. I was very woke and just anxious about everything. And then I corrected my anemia, and not only did my physical health improve, my mental health improved. The way that I saw the world fundamentally changed. I was no longer so anxious and woke and social justice warrior-ish about everything. And it just drastically changed. I felt more masculine. I felt good and confident, and everything ended up, working better. It's because my body was getting more oxygen. Imagine that. Oxygen is kind of important. Carmen says it's working well. Gonna order your book in a few days. Looking forward to more live streams. Thank you, Carmen. That's good to know that the live stream is working, and I appreciate you supporting me with the book order. I hope that you enjoy it. Yeah, it's my book is the thing that I'm most proud of. It's the best thing I've ever made. I put a ton of work into it. There are so many connections, and you will learn a ridiculous amount. You'll learn way more from this book than any other source on anemia and psychology, mental illness, and how it's related to physical illness. So if there's no more questions, I'll end it there, and I'll try and think about what I'll talk about for next week. I don't know if I've decided yet, but it'll be something to do with anemia, mental illness, physical illness, stuff like that. Okay. Bye-bye.